So wonderful. Welcome to our webinar from the Montreal Institute of Classical Homeopathy. Mish, our homeopathy school that gives a full training in to be a classical homeopath. And we also are offering some individual courses, like a first aid course that people can take from the general public. So I'm Carla Marcellus. I'm the one of the teachers, one of the faculty members of Mish, and I am the teacher of the first aid course that we offer at Mish. So some of you may be new to homeopathy, so I'm going to give a little introduction and give you some examples of the kind of situations that can be treated with homeopathy. But first of all, some general information about what is homeopathy and where does it come from. And homeopathy, we could say, was born out of the profound desire by this doctor, Samuel Hanuman, to create a treatment modality that would treat disease in a very gentle way. And so for him, the highest ideal of healing, of cure, is that it is rapid and gentle, and also that it is permanent. So Dr. Hanuman is the founder of homeopathy, of this system that I'll say a bit more about in a moment. But he was particularly concerned with the medical practices of his time, which at that time they were doing a lot of bloodletting and also using toxic substances. And to him, this wasn't rational, that treatment would be more devastating sometimes than the disease itself. And in fact, he had a very serious effect from this, that his son died due to medical interventions. And so this really made him very motivated to try and come up with a different way of treatment. And we can see still today sometimes that people have disabling secondary effects of the medication or surgery. So what then is homeopathy? It is a very well thought out system of medicine that is based on 3 laws that I will go through one by one in more detail, but here you have kind of the names of them. And the one that is the most well known is the law of similars, like cures like. But there's also the law of a single remedy, and we use one remedy to treat the whole of the person. And when that kind of treatment in homeopathy is done, we refer to that as classical homeopathy. Now, sometimes also complexes can be used, and that goes, beyond tonight's presentation. And the students in our school learn that in their 3rd year when they start to practice. And then the 3rd law is the one of the minimum dose, and which is very particular to homeopathy, which is the method of preparation of the remedies is one of dilution and suppression. We can say that when homeopathy is prescribed in this way, that it is curative, that it restores the person to a level of health. And in fact, we could say that it helps the person evolve to a new state of health. And therefore, a remedy doesn't necessarily need to be taken. Sometimes remedies are repeated like once every 6 months or a year when there's another stress that has brought the person into a place where a remedy is needed. Now, we're talking chronic cases in that case, of course. We're different from acute, because acute, you give it a number of times and then it's done and over with. And the other thing that is really beautiful about homeopathy is that it is non-toxic. And that is because of this dilution process. And which also means that we need very little of the original substance. And so therefore, there aren't any environmental impacts. It's not tested on animals in the crude form. Animals can sometimes be treated with homeopathy, but it's not like with chemicals where you go through the various steps of giving to animals before you start to give it to human beings. So a little bit more about the law of similars. And this is something that we actually know some examples of in different circumstances, and we kind of naturally do this, naturally move towards using a similar. And you go and ask any cook in a restaurant setting what she does when burning a hand, or when having a burn from cooking. And what they do is that they hold it close to a radiant heat source. At first, they're going to feel a little bit of more burning, of more pain, but then the pain is so much alleviated, and very often there are no long-term consequences. So there's a very interesting way of using the similar, the thing that caused it, the heat of the burn and the burning sensation, and then use something that creates more heat. And how did Hanuman come to this is that he was, as part of his way to pay himself through med school, he was a translator, and he knew actually a number of languages. And so he was translating a lot of medical literature from the past. In fact, he translated Greek, Arab, and Latin from going back to Hippocrates and that period of time all the way to his own time. And so he was very familiar with a lot that was written in the medical literature. And so he was translating a Materia Medica, a book about remedies, herbal remedies in this case. And he noticed the resemblance between the description of a particular herb, cinchona, and the actions of this herb, and the symptoms of disease malaria, which is actually already at that time was a disease for which the herb was used. And so he decided to take cinchona and do an experimentation on himself, which in homeopathy is one way, or the most important way, that we get to know the remedies. It's a very important part of homeopathic research, and we call those provings. And so this brought out for him the truth behind the law of similars. And in 1796, he published the first paper on that topic of the law of similars. So another example would be, or another way would be, is to look at the changes that a remedy produces in a healthy human being, so which we call a proving. And we have about 5,000 different remedies in homeopathy, and many of them went through these kind of rigorous tests of provings. And these are done by groups of people, and men, women, different ages, and they write down everything that happens to them while they are taking the remedy. And every change, whether it's a physical change, a change in their state of mind, a state in their desires for different foods, etc. So it's very holistic in that sense. The remedies address the whole human being. And so those changes that are produced in this healthy human being, that are gathered and written up, are then compared to the state of the sick person. Their changes on all those levels, again, physical, mental, emotional, and that's how the match is made. And so that remedy, let's say that it was allium cepa, common remedy made from the onion, that produces this kind of sniffling symptoms. And a person who has that type of sniffling symptoms is then treated with allium cepa, and the symptoms are taken away. So the use of similars was in existence across cultures for many centuries. And as I said, that Dr. Hanuman was a translator of that literature. He came across the use of similars in Ayurvedic medicine in India, as well as in the descriptions by Hippocrates of the early roots of Western medicine. And so he formalized the system. He created the structure around how to use this this law, let's say, of similarity, and created a medicine that was called homeopathic. Homeo from the Greek, similar, and the like cures like, and pathos from the unique suffering of the individual that the substance to treat. So the disease that homeopathy addresses is not a local pathology, is not something that happens in one part of the person's body or a particular symptom, whether it's emotional or physical on its own. It addresses a whole, as I said, the whole of the person, and actually it addresses what is deeply inside the energetic disturbance that is at the root of the pathological or symptom expression that is happening at any one time. So therefore, when we do that, when we understand disease as that, then we know that there is only one disease operating at any given time in a person, and therefore only a single remedy needed to match that disease. So Hanuman understood that the organism is one, and therefore only has one disease, and therefore match it with the one remedy. And so this is really what is meant with the word holistic. Therefore, homeopathy is truly holistic. It understands the organism as one whole. So the homeopathic practice of finding and administering that similar remedy, which addresses the individual as a whole, of course requires a process of understanding the patient's suffering in a deep, full way. And to learn this in terms of chronic disease, of course, this is why the teaching, the training is a 4-year training, is a 4-year program, because it's there's a lot involved in that, as you can understand. But even in first aid, we attempt to understand what the overall state is that the person is in on all those levels, mentally, emotionally, as well as pathologically. So you're interested in learning more about this, of course, go to the Mish website. There is lots of information about what homeopathy can do and to what depth homeopathy can work, which is really quite amazing. And of course, if you haven't already, sign up to the newsletter to receive inspiring emails by our founder, Julianne McNamara. And you can find also links to webinars that she has given about this, the depth of treatment that homeopathy can address. But tonight, of course, our focus will be on the powerful use of homeopathy in first aid. Now, there was a third law, as I told you, which is the law of the minimum dose. This is the hardest principle to explain, as we live in a world of materialism, and that something that is not visible to the eye is very often discarded and said that it's not valid. And we know from our experience with homeopathy that, in fact, this energetic medicine is very powerful and very effective. Now, Hanuman worked his whole life to refine his medical art for it to become as gentle as possible, and therefore the development of dilutions comes out of that desire to be gentle. We use just the minimum, meaning the correct potency that is needed to bring the organism back to balance, to give that little information, the little push for the organism to complete its cycle of disease that it's in and come back to a new balance. Now, luckily, we have quantum physics and concepts of energy fields that are helping us to improve our ability to understand and explain homeopathy, as well as to understand the potencies and the dose that is required in different cases, so that we can not only individualize the remedy, but also individualize the potency. Now, how do we make these potencies, the potentized remedies? And that's through a series of potentization, dynamization, succussions. There's a lot of different words for it, but really what we're trying to do is we are diluting the remedy, and this is kind of the most common way that they are diluted, 1 part in 100, and we call those CH, centesimal Hahnemanian, because that was how Hanuman started out with his first dilutions. And so as we are diluting them, we are not just mixing it like that, but we do these succussions, which is a strong pounding of the bottle with the remedy and water alcohol mixture, because that's what we're making it in. Pounding very hard, and all of this is described actually with precision, like how long a distance for the hand that's holding the bottle to come down on the hard surface to create a succussion, and the number of times that it needs to be done between each potency. So what we're doing as we're succussing hard like that, we are extracting also the energetic field of the remedy, the imprint of the remedy. And this is where the remedy non-succussed wouldn't have the same effects. And some of this has been compared and doesn't work in the same way as the succussed remedy. So it really is about those succussions as well as the dilutions that are a primary part of homeopathy. Now, what are remedies made from? In fact, they come from the natural world, but from all 3 kingdoms: the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the animal kingdom. Now, we have many remedies from the mineral kingdom, many remedies from the plant kingdom, and relative fewer remedies from the animal kingdom. But tonight we will look at remedies from all 3 kingdoms, including one from the animal kingdom. So how does first aid, in a way, differ from this deep chronic potential that homeopathy has of treating and bringing about change in a profound way? And so we would say in first aid, we're treating problems that are more superficial, and really for it to be a first aid case, an acute case, we could say as well, they would have to have an external cause. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what that is, so that you sort of understand when can we do something first aid, and when does it require really that more chronic, deep process. And so a cause of the disease, of course, is the circumstances under which the disease or the condition that we are wanting to treat, under which they occurred. And so we have to find out. In injuries, it's usually obvious. Maybe the person has fallen, or they were hit by something. Maybe they stepped on a nail, they burned themselves, etc. So those would all be examples of an external cause. But also hearing bad news, like finding out that someone, a loved one of yours, is diseased or injured, is also considered an external etiology. And in fact, Hanuman was the first doctor to recognize how someone could fall ill after such an emotional situation of receiving bad news. So how is this different from a chronic situation? Is that in a chronic disease, we see that the cause is internal versus in first aid, where it is external, and is really about the person's relationship to the stresses in their life that has created those imbalances in their organism. So a clear, direct, physical, external cause in first aid. So let's say a person has diarrhea. Then an external cause would be like they ate something that was spoiled. Or if they came down with a fever, then were they exposed to a cold wind, etc. So those would be examples of a clear external cause. So here's a little list: trauma, injury, a fall, the loss of a loved one, rape, surgery, dentistry, drinking or consuming spoiled food or water, any other kind of exposure to toxins or an exposure to radiation. This could be side effects of medication, for example, or vaccination. So you see there's a certain theme there. Hopefully all of these are clear as external causes. For example, weather, flying, going up in the mountains, and getting some mountain getting affected there. So these would all be external. And then the ones that we're going to look at tonight is insect bites and stings are, of course, also external. And even some of the more serious, like myocardial infarct or stroke, can be considered an external teething in a baby or giving birth, even though those don't have a direct thing that comes on from the outside. It's still an external event, let's say. Now, acute conditions, of course, arise relatively rapidly and usually, hopefully, also resolve in a short time period. That's another characteristic of a first aid situation. So some more examples here, like all the different kind of injuries that can happen and treated in a first aid kind of way. So any bruises from blunt trauma, sprains, fractures, burns, wounds, surgical trauma, spinal injury, even like a whiplash that somebody might have gotten in a car accident, concussions, sunstroke, heat exhaustion from being out in the sun, dehydration that comes with that, frostbite, and then again our insect or animal bites and stings. So what do these acutes have in common? Well, one of the important aspects here is that there is not too many different ways in which a person responds to such an acute situation. And it's not as individual as how we respond to chronic stress. And so there are not as many different remedies to consider in each type of incidents. And so of the, let's say, 5,000 homeopathic remedies that are available, and many more could be made out of nature's abundance. But in a homeopathic first aid kit, we are fine with some 40 or up to 50 remedies, let's say. So that's also what we teach in the course, are about 40 to 50 remedies. And of course, you're going to learn them in that course in a first aid kind of way. And many of those remedies also have a much deeper and more profound aspect that they can be used in when there is an issue of chronic stress, in which way we would say that there is more involvement of the individual in their soul and their ego movement, and what we call susceptibility of the individual, which is what we treat homeopathically. So a small group of remedies, it makes it easier, and we're using the affinities that were found out of the remedies in the provings, meaning how the different remedies relate specifically to external or pathological aspects, and that way makes it also simpler to determine the remedy choice, or how to make a decision on which remedy to give. So this ends the first part of our presentation. What did we learn? We learned those 3 laws or 3 principles of homeopathy. We learned that homeopathy addresses the whole person. We saw the difference between acute and chronic, and learned what it means to have an external cause or an external etiology, and what in an acute condition, that the whole state is in that in a certain intensity. Or I didn't actually speak too much to this, but so not only are people's responses to a situation that's a first aid or an acute situation fairly similar, and we have limited number of remedies to choose from, also that state is quite on the surface and is relatively easy to perceive, which also makes it easier to teach first aid homeopathy. Okay, so are there any questions at this point?
We did see some comments come into the chat. It's Mayra said, hugs from Honduras. Someone you know from Honduras, maybe?
Wow, that's great. Welcome.
Fun, eh?
Wonderful, yeah.
And we have a nurse from Washington State who says, this has all hit home and she can't help but take notes. So there's enthusiasm. Yeah, it's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really speak to the all that experience that I have in Honduras, like how fortunate I am to be going with the homeopaths de Terre Sans Frontières on missions and take Mish graduates and interns to, on the one hand, provide a homeopathic service in Honduras, and on the other hand, for us to get the experience of being able to work homeopathically in an integrative setting, and often working together with other health professionals, and among others we work with nurses there, and doctors, and so it's a really very rich experience that we have.
That feels like it would be good information to add to the slideshow. It wouldn't be out of place. It would be nice to see there.
Right.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, so comments come in from Pennsylvania, I think, PA, USA. I can see how this makes Big Pharma nervous, and the USDA will try to dismiss homeopathy. Unfortunately, it's valid and it works. Curing people takes away pharmaceutical customers. Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, one of the things that is so wonderful about our experience in Honduras is that, you know, we really are invited there with open arms, and they're very excited about our work there, including the UNA, which is the National Autonomic Universities, a state-funded university, and one of the faculties there that is the most enthusiastic is actually the faculty of chemistry and pharmacy, and they are looking forward to learning how to make homeopathic remedies. So it's a really great opportunity.
Wow, that's so interesting. Eh? You go a little bit outside of North America and you encounter these different perspectives. Yeah.
Yes, you know, there's many countries where homeopathy is one of the official health systems, and I think if you listen to some of Julianne's webinars, I think she talks about, you know, the fact that Western medicine really was founded on 3 pillars, and homeopathy is one of the pillars. Naturopathy would be, you know, the another one of the pillars, going with nature, using nature, and then the 3rd pillar would be the use of contraries, which would be what is now referred to as Western medicine, but it's actually really only one of the 3 pillars of Western medicine. And if we could have an integrative medicine where all 3 are working together, we would really be so much more supportive, you know, to patients who need care. And so in a number of countries, they've recognized that, and they've actually, you know, allowed all these, you know, the 3 pillars to be official, part of official medicine, like in the UK, like in Switzerland, like in Germany, France, a number of European countries, but also India is, you know, I think is like the biggest role model. You know, there's hundreds of homeopathic universities and hospitals, and it's really, you know, quite amazing. You know, together with, they're also, you know, Ayurvedic, traditional Indian faculties, medical faculties, and hospitals, for people who choose that form of treatment. So really, the, you know, the use of all the various modalities in a way to support a person.
Yeah. You're mentioning that webinar that Judy Ann did, it was recorded, and we can offer it as a link as well to anybody who wants it.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. So yeah. So I guess when we wrap up, I'll just tell everyone how to contact us so that we can give them the link to that. Yeah. We have another comment that's come in, bringing us back to topic.
Okay.
It's a Pamela from Montreal. She says, you spoke about a less individualized response in acute situation. Thus, excuse me, why do we see such different degrees of reaction to insect bites? For example, one person is barely affected and another person experiences serious welts and intense itching, etc.
Yes. So that's great, and we will actually go into that. So you're right on topic, Pamela, and not everybody has the same extent of susceptibility, we could say, and reactivity. Absolutely, that is true. And so there is an individualization there. And so, like, even though it would be the similar kind of state that they would go in, some is more intense and others less intense. So it would still be the same remedy, but maybe you don't need to repeat it as much. And you know, so there would be individualization on that level. So yeah. That's good. Do we have other questions, Susanna, or should I start on the second part?
I think that's it for now. I think we're good to start again.
So the remedy that maybe many of you have heard about, and that I did actually a whole webinar on in January, is Arnica. It really is an amazing homeopathic remedy, talking about how people can react very much in the same kind of way to, for instance, trauma or like injuries of various kinds, and a kind of a shock state that comes in, and many, and so that's, it's individual, maybe in its intensity, but it all looks very similar. And so we can say that almost all of those kind of traumas would require arnica, and so we will, when we wrap up at the end, we will also let you know how you can have access to the webinar that we did on arnica. So, which is not our topic of tonight, but I did want to refer to it, So, but tonight we really did want to talk about insect bites and stings, and how to avoid being bothered by these not so welcome guests that we get in the summer, especially when we are trying to enjoy the outdoors, which we don't have so much time to do in a year. So how do we make that most enjoyable? When you go camping or any time, I think it's black fly season in much of the surrounding areas of Montreal, and mosquitoes have already started up as well. I did see already my first patient who hadn't come for prevention with full covered in mosquito bites. Yeah. So not very relaxing to be camping when you are surrounded by all that buzzing, and you need to wear, such protective wear to not to avoid getting completely stung. So I always like to start with a little story of an example of a patient. And this would be one, Pamela, of a patient with a very strong reaction. And a 6-year-old boy, always reacting to mosquito bites, getting red and swollen, kind of big, really, really big bumps. And that would take a long time to go away. So, and you're very right, we don't all react to them in that way. So one time his mother called me after he had been particularly bad, and he was covered, according to her, and the bites were very red, swollen, felt hot to the touch, and he was in pain. Now, when we do the similar matching, we see that the remedy Apis is the one that is the correct remedy. And it's a very good remedy for that kind of reaction, and not only to mosquito bites or other bites, but we'll see that it can even be used in other situations. But so how is this like yours like? Well, the Apis remedy is made from the venom of the bee. And any of you who've had a bee sting knows that is very red and swollen and painful. And so Apis is going to work as a similar to those kind of reactions, red, swollen, and painful, and will then beautifully calm down. But there is a way to prevent this kind of reaction before you go out into the country. And so especially for kids, it would be a very good way to work with this. And so in order to see what is most similar to insect stings, let's say mosquito bites, we have to look at it, investigate a bit further, because we have to give a remedy to the similar. So what really is an insect bite? It's a sting. It's like a piercing of your skin, like with a sharp object, and it's a penetrating wound. Well, we have a very good remedy in homeopathy for that, which is called ledum, and sometimes also pronounced ledum. So a very important remedy in homeopathy, because it is especially important to use in penetrating wounds, as I said, and can prevent tetanus if it is given when such a wound has happened. It can, of course, be used also to treat animal and insect bites and stings, because they are penetrating wounds. And one of the characteristics is that the area around the wound feels cold. Now, some of you know this plant. It's actually, its common name is Labrador tea, and is also known in herbology, not only in homeopathy, to work with the immune system. And as I said, it prevents tetanus if it's given immediately after a wound, a deep penetrating wound, let's say, is stepping on a nail, has occurred. Beautiful little flowering plant. So some of the characteristics. So the injury has very little bleeding. There can be a lot of pain and puffiness and some discoloration, and doesn't feel hot like the apis, you see. It's more often cold. And if it has been a wound, like let's say, like from a stepping in a nail, then sometimes we can even see the twitching of muscles, which could be an indication of tetanus. It can also affect the skin and can produce an eruption like poison oak, to which it's also an antidote. Now, just to get on that information of the tetanus prevention, it's not the only remedy there. Sometimes when the area has become hot, there's another remedy that needs to be given, which is hypericum. It's also a very important first aid remedy that you would learn more about in the first aid course. So what would be the protocol to use ledum as a preventative? Yeah, here we're going to talk later a bit about potency. You can use 30 CH or 200 CH. If you use the 30, you're going to need to take it more often because it's a lower potency. So that's why I like to tell people to use the 200. Take it once a week. It's good to start before you go out to forest country or countryside. 2 weeks, like let's say 2 doses before you go, and then you continue once per week until you're back in the city or until that season has passed. You may still be bitten, but you might not notice your bites at all, or you might no longer get bitten at all. So very, very good. But again, individualization, it doesn't work for everybody. It works for a large number, a large percentage. Let's say, actually, you never really counted that, but probably about 90% of people, it's going to be good and going to be good for most insect bites. But for some people, other remedy might be needed, or for some people it works for mosquito bites, but then for other type of bites, we'll talk about horseflies and deer flies in a moment, other remedies would be needed. And also, of course, we will learn more about the other remedies in the first aid course, but sometimes this is maybe an issue of individualization, where there is more going on than just the fact of sensitivity to the insect bites. And then a homeopath would be good to get a full individualized prescription. So if it is not mosquitoes, or if it is a much more intense reaction, then of course we're getting back to our apis. And so always remember that one as well. When the reaction is hot and the swelling is big and red, which we see more commonly in everybody, when it's bee stings, wasp stings, horse and deer flies, and also jellyfish stings. And so in those cases, with that characteristic, you would give apis. And here you can use the 30CH. Generally speaking, we would use the ledum as the preventative. And then if we find that somebody still has a reaction that is red and hot and swollen, etc., then we'd give the apis afterwards. Now, apis is also a very important remedy for anaphylactic shock. For instance, somebody's allergic to bee stings and gets an anaphylactic shock. Obviously, they're going to have their EpiPen with them and their medication. But if you have a chance to give them a dose of apis, I actually myself have experienced a number of situations where the medication was avoided just by using apis and holding off a little bit, and the reaction was completely quieting down. So some other things that people can be allergic to, whether it's foods or drugs or stings from like jellyfish or scorpions or nettles, that kind of reaction can react really well to a couple of doses of apis. So if you didn't get stung, maybe there was something else that needed your attention during the camping trip or during a picnic. And let's say maybe something happened with the food. Maybe it was left out in the heat, and you got a serious case of food poisoning, well, or hopefully not such a serious one, or major indigestion. And there's a few remedies that maybe some of you already know about, but that I would like to highlight here as well. And one is Nux vomica. And actually what I didn't put here is that it also is known under another name, Colubrina. But I think most pharmacies and health food stores that sell homeopathy, you can find it under that name. And this is kind of we say this is also the hangover remedy. When you have overindulged yourself, you've actually eaten too much, not only if the food was spoiled, but maybe also if maybe you ate or had too much fatty foods, or maybe even too much alcohol. Nux vomica is a good remedy for that. Because in its provings, we see a lot of digestive disturbances like colics and cramps, nausea and colics and cramps that wake the person up really early, like maybe 3 or 4 a.m. And they're in such trouble that they can't go back to sleep. They may feel nauseous but can't really vomit. And also on the mental, emotional, that person is very out of sorts, irritable, impatient kind of person. The other important remedy for food poisoning is arsenicum. And this is very often one where the problems start more around midnight or 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. And they are really nauseous, and they are vomiting and having diarrhea, feeling very restless, anxious. and often move around, can't get comfortable anywhere. Can also be an allergic reaction with hives that comes with that. But so that's the arsenicum picture. And then a third one, just briefly, is pulsatilla, and is another remedy that can help when you're reacting to food, and in this case, particularly if you get diarrhea from eating pork or particular fat-rich foods. So now that you have learned about a few remedies, I would like to talk a little bit more in general about how to take the homeopathy and give some more details there. And of course, speak to homeopathy safety, and which is very wonderful. It is completely safe, doesn't have any side effects, can be used taken by people of any age, whether it's infants, elderly, women who are pregnant, and they do not interfere with any medication that a person may be taking. So, which is also very wonderful. It's not always true for other natural things like herbs, but it's very true for homeopathy. Now, how do we take it? The posologies. I already made a little reference to what the potency is usually that we use in first aid is the 30 CH. But we can use other potencies, and I gave the example of using Lidum as a preventative by using the 200 CH. But we can go very high, like if it's a very intense situation, like a myocardial infarct or a whiplash with a lot of pain, concussion, etc. And we might even go up to a 50 M, which means 50,000 CH. So that remedy has been diluted 50,000 times, 1 in 100. So, but more commonly, and what we teach in the first aid class are more the 30 CH. And when you get a first aid kit from a homeopathic company like Helios, for instance, the remedies most of the time will be in 30. They do have a few kits with remedies in 200 CH, like their pregnancy and labor kit, because sometimes you need that higher potency in that situation. Okay, so what is a dose? When we talk about a dose, so if you're having granules, I know that they will often say on the bottles, because they have to from Health Canada, you know, how many granules to take, and 5 granules 3 times a day. But that's really not how it goes, because we dose according to the symptoms, and 1 dose of a granules is 1 pellet. And 1 liquid dose is usually a few drops, like let's say 3 to 5 drops. Or, and I'll explain this in a little bit, if you're doing it making it the remedy in a water bottle, then it's about the size of a tablespoon or a swallow. And when we're using liquid doses, we can continue to succuss. And this helps when we are repeating them more frequently, to avoid any kind of possible aggravation by frequent repetition. So the important part is when we're dry, when we're using the globules or the granules, that you don't touch them. Because where they're going to touch is where they're going to give off their energy. And let's say you want to give the granules to your child, for instance, and you've touched it, then you've already gotten the remedy dose. And it won't be there when you then drop it in the mouth of the child. So you drop it in the lid and of of the container in which it comes. In fact, usually not these kind of glass bottles that are here on the picture, and usually have a little lid on them that you turn around and the granules fall in the lid, and so then you just drop it in your mouth or in the mouth of the other person, and make sure also that the cap doesn't touch your mouth. You don't want to contaminate anything. And then you let them melt in your mouth. And the same with the liquid. When you let the drops drop in your mouth, and you hold it there under the tongue, or because this is where the remedy is going to do its effect. It gets in touch with the nervous system. There's lots of nerve endings in your mouth, under the tongue especially, and so that's how it then discharges its energy throughout the system, throughout your body. As I said, we can do a water bottle preparation if somebody has to take the remedy a lot of times. Then just get a mineral water at the wherever store you get those, and use a new one that hasn't had anything else but the water in it. Take out a little bit of the water because you're going to want to shake it. You want to have space to do the succussion, and then you can put in 5 to 10 globules or 10 to 15 drops of the remedy. And so here now you have a lot of doses that you can take, and because they're like one swallow, and between each dose or before the dose, you're going to do this succussion. So you're taking the bottle in your one hand, and you're going to pound it either on the palm of your other hand or on like a cushion or your sofa or something. You give it a couple of good pounds, and here too you hold the liquid in your mouth for a minute or two so that the remedy can give off its energy in the mouth. And so here you're going to repeat as needed. So this is part of the beauty of homeopathy, is that you don't take it when you don't need it, and except for in preventions, but in a way you do need it there. And so when you're treating a particular symptom, then you go with the repetition follows how the symptom is improving. So let's say we were talking about that little case there with the apis, the little boy with his very severe mosquito bites, reaction to it. So he took apis, the swelling went down a little bit, but clearly was still in discomfort. So we repeated it, and it went down more. And so we waited another number of hours, let's say, because he was starting to do better. So then you wait to see if the improvement continues or if it stops. And when you notice that, no, it's no longer further improving, then you repeat. Or sometimes, let's say you've gone to bed, in the morning you wake up and the symptoms have gotten a bit worse again. So then you take the remedy again. And so in this way, with the Arnica, when somebody has had an accident or they've had surgery and you want to use the Arnica, the water bottle is your best way. With some of the things we talked about, we're not necessarily repeating as often, but so we're still giving you the information that these are the 3 ways, let's say, that you can dose the homeopathy. Oh, maybe you can make a little traveler kit here. Oh, here are the tubes, the way that they are sold in the pharmacies. One brand that is really quite commonly available is Boiron. And so you can get those remedies in the 30 CH and have your little traveler kit with you. Or the Leadem, of course, in the 200. And if there's only one remedy you remember from the webinar, it's your Leadem. And you can go out and use that and let us know how it went. That'd be great to get your feedback. And Susanna, is this the email address we want them to write to?
I'm not sure, just because it's fine. Yeah, they can send it to info@nichemontreal.com, and I'll watch that email address to make sure that we'll send them the link to the Arnica presentation as well as the 3 pillars webinar that you mentioned.
Yes. Yeah, great. So yes, so we hope you will all send a little email to this email address, and so that we know you were online, and then we can send you that link. Then you can watch those other presentations.